in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1868. Never forget, it is 9/11, 2024. It has been 23 years since 9/11 changed everybody's lives. And even if you weren't here in the States where everything happened, even if you were far away from things that were happening, it had an impact. It had a worldwide impact on what happened. And my dog has found a different toy to play with. Sorry about the squeaks. So I thought it would be good to look at it from a genealogical perspective as to what we can do to never forget, because we never want to forget what happened. We never want to forget how that day and the next day, everybody came together to help each other. Do you mind? She has a turkey. This is her turkey. It squeaks. It has a hole here to put treats in. And she wants to play. And I can't reach over and close the door because then she'll come around through this one. Anyway, back to the topic of today. Never forget about what happened, about how it impacted and changed. So in never forgetting, we have to remember that we're not going to be around. We are not immortal. We are mortal people who are here for a finite amount of time. So what is going to happen to our memories of that day and how it impacted us for future generations? How are we going to be able to let them know? So we've come up with a list of things for you. I'm very good with lists this week. So one of the first things you can do is document your family stories. Encourage family members who were around on 9/11 to share and document the stories of those that were lost. If you had a family member who died on that day or who died during the recovery, or died later from their injuries. But if you had somebody who was lost because of that day, or you were somehow affected, like you were personally at ground zero helping survivors, you were a survivor yourself, you are a family member you're a family member that lost somebody, you are the survivor, you are the widow, the widower, the child that got left behind, whatever it is, how it affected you. Even those of us who didn't have a personal connection with those that were lost in the plane crashes that day, you were still impacted. And it's important to let people know that even though you weren't personally affected as far as having somebody in the buildings, in the planes, you still had a connection to what happened that day. You were still affected by it. So passing down your personal memories through the generations is a way to help preserve the impact of the event. I myself slept through the whole thing. I've been on that week. I was on night shift. I was a front desk supervisor at the residence in Merrifield, which is there in the greater DC area, and we were put into lockdown. All Marriott hotels were immediately put into lockdown. Nobody could get a room in any Marriott hotel, not even those that had the special card that overrode sellouts. Yeah, we do have there are some Marriott members who, frequent stayers, who have this little card that allows them to, if they're sold out, if a hotel is sold out, you can walk and present this card and the hotel has to give you a room, basically. But it was on complete shutdown, everything. And our hotel happened to be next door to the building where the American Red Cross had their headquarters. So we had a whole bunch of people that had checked out that day. And of course, they're now trying to call the hotel to get back in again and can't, because we've got our rooms now blocked off for the American Red Cross people that are coming in to assist with the recoveries and everything that was going on at the Pentagon. So I slept through the whole thing. I had been on night shift. I'd gone home that morning. I got home around 7:30, 7:45. Brad was getting up, getting ready to go to work. My night auditor was on leave that week, so I was covering for him. And so I remember saying goodbye to Brad, having breakfast with Brad, and then he went off to work and I went to bed. And I was finding it really hard to sleep during the day. Thankfully, I had blackout curtains in the bedroom, which helped a lot. But when I woke up, it was around 11:30 when I woke up. And I suddenly remembered that we had documents that we had to get back to these people by the 13th. And so I thought, well, and they had sent us an overnight envelope to send the signed documents back to them in. And I thought, well, if Brett, I've got to find out what time Brett gets home. If I leave early enough, I can go, and it would be a longer drive, go via FedEx, or, my hotel's in that direction. FedEx main office is in that direction. Their sorting center is in that direction. I could go via their sorting center. I could drop it off there in their drop box because they don't close till 9 o'clock. So I can drop it in there before on my way to work. Actually, I was starting at 11 that night. Yeah, I was going to leave early and put it in their drop box, which means they would have got it the next day, and then the people would have got it on the 13th. And so I thought, well, let me call Brad and find out what time he's going to be home. No clue, nothing about what was going on, knew nothing about it. And so I called Brad and I said to him, I'm just calling to see what time you're going to be home. We've got to get these documents signed. I thought I could go via FedEx tonight to drop them in the box so they will get them on the 13th. He goes, haven't you heard what's happened? I says, what do you mean? And he turns around and he says, the Twin Towers are no more. I said, no, he said, the World Trade Center is no more. I says, as in the Twin Towers in New York? He goes, yeah. He goes, yeah. And I said, what happened? He says, a plane flew in. He said, 2 planes flew into them. And I'm like, what? I'm like, nah. I'm like thinking he's playing a prank on me, right? He says, yeah, turn the TV on. And I turned the TV on, and it was like I was watching a movie. I felt like I was watching a movie. But then I started clicking through the channels, and like every channel. And then he's telling me that he was on his way to work. And this is how in the morning he left. He was on his way to work when he saw the smoke go up from the plane that hit the Pentagon, because that's the way that he went to work. He saw the smoke go up from when the plane hit the Pentagon. Then he was telling me about the plane that went down in Pennsylvania. And I'm just I'm listening to this, I'm watching this on TV, and I'm thinking it's a movie, but it's on every freaking channel that I switched to. Every channel was carrying it. And I'm just like, what the heck? And so he's explaining about these terrorist attacks and all the different buildings that got affected by it, and the plane going down in Pennsylvania. And I'm just sort of like, what? I wasn't comprehending it very well. And I'm sort of like, oh, I got to go. And I said, well, when are you? And he says, we are currently on lockdown on base here. And he worked at the Naval Research Lab at the time. He says, we're on lockdown at the base here. We're not allowed to do any work. We've been shut down off the network, and they are broadcasting. I think it was CNN. They were broadcasting to everybody's terminals in the building. So, and he said, I don't know when we're going to be released to go home, but we're currently in lockdown. He says, DC's in a lockdown. He says, the roads are all blocked. People are trying to get out of town. And I'm just sort of like, oh my gosh, this is a nightmare. And then I would suddenly think, work's going to need extra hands. And so I says, okay, let me know when you can come, when you're on your way home, so I know when to expect you. And so then I tried calling the hotel. It took me over an hour to get through to the hotel that I worked at. And because the lines were just busy. And when I finally got through, they had every available hand answering a phone. Our salespeople, we had 4 people in the sales department. They're all answering phones. General managers answering phones, assistant general managers answering phones, chief of engineering's answering phones, the front desk is answering phones. They had everybody answering phones, and they weren't answering them quick enough for the number of calls that were coming in. So I finally got through and happened to get through to, was it the general manager or the assistant general manager? Got through to one of them and said, I just woken up and I've just heard what happened. Do you guys need me to come in early tonight? And they said, yes. And so we arranged what time I was going to come in. And I said, what's happening? And they said, we are on complete. And there's a special term that that is used by Marriott when it is on total and utter lockdown. Like nobody can get a reservation, not even the black card people. And I can't remember what that term is. It's been a long time since I've had to use it. And so I said to them, and they said, oh, we're on whatever that lockdown term is. And I went, seriously? And they says, yeah, and they said, we had everybody that checked out today that went to the airport to then fly home are now calling us to try and get hotel rooms. And we said, we can't, we are locked down. We're not taking any reservations. All of our rooms are available for American Red Cross personnel only. And American Red Cross are providing us with the names of the people that are coming in, and we're assigning them rooms. As soon as we get the names, we assign them a room. So when they come in, their room keys are going to be ready. We just need basic information and stuff. I said, okay, what time do you want me there? They told me, I think I had to go in like 7, so I did a 7 to 7 shift. I got in there. It was a complete mayhem. There was, and normally when you walk into the residence and I walked into, you'd walk into the foyer, reception desk is over here to the left, straight ahead is the gatehouse area where they serve breakfast and evening socials during the week. They do a manager's social thing where we put out nibbles and that sort of stuff. And there's a couch there. There's a TV in the corner. There's a fireplace that you can see from both sides. And above the fireplace on the gatehouse side is the TV. And you can actually see the TV from the reception desk if you're standing in the right place. And you can definitely hear it. There were a lot of people in that area. I don't think there was anybody who was in the hotel that was not in the gatehouse area. They're all sitting there. They've got their eyes glued to the TV. They're watching it. They're discussing it. And I will tell you this, after, now my shift usually starts at 11, I think, and I got there at 7. And when I got, after everybody had left, there was just me and the security personnel for the evening. And I started doing my usual stuff for the night audit and that. And I had never seen the gatehouse that busy in my entire time at that hotel. There were constantly people coming and going. And I was, and usually on night shift, it's dead. Like I would go put like the Home and Garden channel on, one of those nice channels. So I didn't have to listen to news. I would go flick that on. So I had some noise in the background, but there was nobody around, and you very rarely got anybody coming down to the front desk at that time, except the security guy as he's doing his patrols and everything else. And it was busy. It was busy. Not only did I have Red Cross people coming, we had to check in, because they were coming in at all hours, because they couldn't fly in. They had to drive in. So as soon as they were able to drive in and get to the hotel, then we had rooms for them. But that whole lobby gatehouse area was busy all night. There was lots of conversations going on. People were coming down in their robes and their pajamas just to have the company of other people. They didn't want to sit in their room by themselves and watch what was happening. They wanted to be there with other people. And it became a great community that evening where everybody came together and they were busy chit-chatting backwards and forwards and commenting on things and taking calls from family members back home to say, yes, we're okay. Yes, I'm safe. Because cell phone lines were a little on the busy side as well as landlines were. And so it took some people some time to get through based on what service they had at the time as well. So that was my experience of 9/11. I went home the next morning. I hardly got any sleep that morning because I was so hyped up from everything that had happened that night. And usually around, my general manager's not watching this, usually around 3 to 4 o'clock was when I would hit a wall. And that's when I would then go into the break room. I would have picked up something to eat on the way in with a lot of protein in it. And that's when I would go and have a nibble, because I'd start hitting a wall and start sort of like, I don't think, and everything is already done. I've done all my reports and everything, closed out the previous day, done all the reports, printed them all off, distributed them as they needed to be distributed. And so around 3 or 4 o'clock, it's just sort of like that lag time. And it's sort of like, could really do with a snooze. that 3 to 4 a.m. time period was an hour where all I wanted to do was go to sleep. And I would go out the back behind where people couldn't see you in the back office there. I was doing jumping jacks back there. I wanted to do like sit-ups and crunches and that, but I didn't want to lay down on the floor, because if I lay down on the floor, I'd fall asleep. So anything revolving around staying upright, I'm running on the spot, I'm doing jumping jacks, anything to keep me awake. I didn't have to do any of that particular morning because there were just so many people around. And during the night, we had anywhere from 15 to 20 people down there in that lobby area when usually there's nobody. And then trying to take a break to go and have something to eat was a little impossible because of what was going on with everybody coming and going and all of that, and Red Cross people arriving throughout the night as they drove in. People were trying to get, of course, they couldn't book flights because everything was locked down. They couldn't even get on the trains. They were all locked down. And so they're trying to find rental cars, couldn't find them. They'd already rented it all out. So people are trying to figure out, how am I going to get home? And this is people that were there for like the week and leaving on either Thursday or Friday or Saturday. They're trying to figure out, how am I going to get home? Their flights have been cancelled and everything. And it was a mess. So those are my recollections of that day, my perspective. I did not have anybody that I personally knew who had been on any of the planes or in any of the buildings. But that was how it affected me. By the time I got to Friday, and I had a therapist that I was working with at the time, I was a mess. And she says, how much have you seen of the news? I said, I'm working night shift. I said, it is constantly on at night because there's always, and that whole week we have people down in the lobby all through the nights. I never had a night that whole week where there was nobody in the gatehouse room. And those that were in the gatehouse, if they were there by themselves, they wanted to talk to somebody. So I was that one that got to hear a lot of stuff. And they were, and my therapist was like, you are not allowed to watch any more news. Because I typically didn't watch news anyway. She says, no. She said on that Friday during my session, she says, you ought to turn the news off. I said, yeah. I said, yep, I can do that, because Friday and Saturday night we had somebody else come in to do night shift. And so I wasn't working Friday, Saturday night, and Sunday my regular guy was back. I went, okay. And I could easily do that. So it was affecting my emotional state and my mental state so much that my therapist said, no more news. She said, you can do a 10-minute update a day. That's it. I'm like, okay, I can handle that. Because she knew that I'd gone from zero news to watching it almost constantly during my waking hours. So those are my recollections of that day. Do I have it recorded, written down? Right here. Every November 11th, I talk about the story. So this is a way of documenting. It can either be written, it can be voice recorded, it can be videoed, whatever way you want to memorialize your memories of those days for future generations, so they can hear the more different perspectives they can hear, I think the better understanding the future generations will have on the impact that day had on everybody's lives, whether they were actually knew anybody in the buildings or the planes, or whether they were actually there at ground zero of any of those, the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, the plane in Pennsylvania, anybody that was at ground zero on any of those, they get those people's perspective. Another way that you can help memorialize this day is collecting photos and memorabilia. Collect photos, digital photos, letters, and artifacts that are related to loved ones who may have perished or who even had survived. This will give them something physical to look at, to say, oh, we lost that, that person passed away, my great-grandfather passed away. This is future generations looking back. Record oral histories. Encourage survivors, or if you were connected to any of the victims, to record your experiences. I think it's important that, yes, it was an extremely tragic event. It had a massive impact on the world, but being able to record your own story about it. Oh, that was one thing I did. After I got off the phone, the first thing I did after I got off the phone with Brad is I checked the time, did a quick calculation in my head to figure out what time it was in New Zealand. It was around 6 o'clock in the morning. So I called my parents and I said to them, I just want to let you know, Brad and I are both okay. The boys are good, but this is what's happened. So they heard it first from me, because I knew they would be getting up in the next 10 to 15 minutes. And I didn't want them turning on the news and panicking. Am I okay? Is Brad okay? Are the boys okay? I just said, let you know, everybody in the family is good. This is what's happened. And so they said after my phone call, and we spoke for about 10 minutes, after the phone call, they got up, they said they went out, they turned the news on to see what was happening and everything else, and got caught up with everything, but knowing that we were okay. Had I not called them, they might have been in a little bit of a panic. So, doing stuff like that helped. Recording oral histories of survivors or those that were connected with victims, so that you can record their experiences, what the emotions were they went through, how did they start moving forward after that event. You would never move on from that event, but you will move forward. So what did they, after they had recovered from their injuries, some may have had permanent injuries, how did they move forward from that event? How did it affect them going into tall buildings? How did it affect them, if they were going to get on planes, and that sort of thing as well. Researching genealogical records, highlight how future genealogists will find vital records. That's my own notes. I'm reading my future genealogists will be able to find vital records, obituaries, and articles on those that were lost during 9/11. It is important to add these details to the family tree for remembrance. So in future generations, when they're looking back through this and they find these records, attach them to those people in the family tree, attach them to the family tree, to those people, so that they are there Even attach the stories. What happened that day? How did you find out that that person was a victim on that plane or in the Pentagon or at the Twin Towers? How did you find out about that? Even talk about that sort of stuff too. You can connect through, you can do connections through DNA matches. DNA testing was able to help identify some of the victims from 9/11. And of course, those records are on file and everything. I'm not sure if they're publicly available for DNA matching. I don't know. But if they are, then it is a way that you can then find out if you were related to anybody who was in that. You can create family memorials, create online memorials or dedicate pages in family trees to honor the legacy of those that were lost in 9/11, especially if they were part of your family or even if they were a close friend. Close friend, we consider families. You've got your genealogical family, which are connected through genetics and DNA, and then you have your family that you choose. There could be some rifts in families where it's been broken away, but and you've got your parents, but you maybe haven't had a fallout with your parents, but you've got another couple who became your mentors and sort of filled in that gap that your parents were unable to fulfill. So make sure that if anything happened to them or their family, that you mention them in your family tree too, because it is a way to honor them, that they were part of your chosen family, not your genetic family. So it's important to recognize those people as well. You can actually find healing through genealogy. By researching family history, it can be a tool for healing. It can strengthen connections to a wider family network and offer a sense of continuity as well. So those future generations will be able to make that connection back. Commemorating in reunions suggests, one suggestion is that when you're having a family reunion, take time during those gatherings or reunions to acknowledge those that were lost, discuss their stories, keep their memories alive and within the family. This is something that you can do when you're doing family reunions, not just for those who lost their lives in a tragedy like a war or a terrorist attack or a natural disaster. It is also for those that are no longer with you since the last reunion. So it's a great way to commemorate those who have lost their lives. And when you're telling the stories about them, if they were part of the 9/11 in the planes, in the buildings, or if they were on the ground, that was the other one too, on the ground as well. If they were actually there at ground zero, helping pull out survivors, helping pull out bodies, if they're part of the recovery teams and things like that, make sure you acknowledge those people, especially if they were lost. But even if they were survivors as well, acknowledge them as well when you're at reunions. Keep the stories going, keep the memories alive. And you can also use this time to educate future generations by passing down these stories. Younger generations can learn through the different perspectives of people, through the books that are out there. I didn't bring the book in. I found the book that I have on 9/11. So that future generations, through books, through family history, can learn just about the massive impact that day had and the impacts on the families, just your own family, families who lost somebody, families who had somebody survive, families who had people who were on the ground zero levels who were helping find people amongst the rubble and everything else, whether they were dead or alive. Those stories need to be passed down so that people can see the impact that had. One thing that that fascinates me is, and if you've heard if you tune in on June 6th every year, you will hear my different things that I've learned about D-Day, the landing at Normandy, and about how even though I was not around during that time, it still has an impact on me, because the more I learn about that particular day, the more I am in awe of the impact that not only did it have on the war at that time, but on the number of people that were involved with that. It just still blows my mind about the number of people that they had, the number of moving parts they had, and the whole thing was kept secret. This here this day had a lot of moving parts. And yes, there's a lot of stories and rumors out there, and I'm not getting into any of those, but there was a lot of moving parts. Some people knew about it, some people didn't. There might have been rumors about it, there may not have been. I don't know. I wasn't there, I wasn't involved, so I can't comment on that. All I know is that that day when those planes hit those buildings, hit the Twin Towers, hit the Pentagon, landed in that field in Pennsylvania, that was a turning point in American history where a nation came together after that. And I saw somebody post today, they say, yes, we remember the impact of 9/11, but also remember what happened on 9/12 and how a nation pulled together. And I'm sort of like, yeah, we did. We came together as a nation and did what we could to help those that were affected to move forward, to help people find answers. Because I remember one of the heart-wrenching things, and it affected me so emotionally, I was standing there crying at the front desk, was they were down near Ground Zero in New York, and people were putting up posters and pictures of missing family members who had either been in the towers or somewhere around the towers. And they're standing there by these pictures looking for these people, looking for any news about their loved ones who were involved, who were in that area. And it was so heart-wrenching. I just remember standing there behind the front desk and just tears just pouring down my face as these as teenage kids were looking for parents. They're down there with photographs of a mother or a father or both, looking for their parents, any news about their parents. And they were sharing, and yes, it was a tragedy, but for me, the cool part was, every tragedy has a silver lining. The cool part was that these kids or these spouses or partners or friends were telling the stories about their loved ones who were missing. And I thought that was I think that's what got me more than saying, oh, this is my dad, I'm looking for him. No, they told the story about their dad. They told the reporter who their dad was, what sort of a person he was, and you got to hear that. I really hope that somewhere out there that those recordings have been passed back to those family members so that they can have it as part of, or those recordings are somewhere where people have access to them so they can go back and look and see the immediate impact that day had on on thousands of people. Because I think that is such an enriching story that's right there to be told, and for future generations to go back and listen to those people who are standing there looking for a parent, a spouse, a loved one, a partner, a sibling, an aunt, an uncle, a niece, a nephew, a child. Those stories that those reporters recorded, that will give a lot of people future generations an idea of the impact that day had, along with their own family stories about that day and memories. So take time to write down, to video, to record in some way what you remember about that day. And even if you were of the generation that was born after 9/11, what have you been told about it? Interview your parents, the older generations that you have around you, about their memories about that day, so that you get a sense of why we take time to remember everybody who perished that day. We take time to remember the impact that had, not just on the US, but worldwide. There was a worldwide impact on that day. And just, what happened when people started moving forward, what happened. So take time to remember, take time to pause, take time to meditate, prayer, whatever it is that you do, to talk to whoever you believe in, to be thankful for those people's lives and the legacies that they left behind, and to think about, just take a moment of silence for them and think about the impact that those people's lives had in your family, and for those that are still around, what have they done now moving forward? What have they accomplished since 9/11? What has happened to some of those people? So that's it from us for today. Take a moment of silence just to honor those who lost their lives that day. Also include in that too all of those who came to the rescue, whether they were firefighters, police, the military coming in to help rescue people, to help recover. Take a moment of silence just to honor the memories of what happened that day and the people that were lost that day. Even the days following that, those that died from injuries, those that died from injuries sustained during rescue. Take time out just to remember all of those people, and remember to write down your thoughts on that day. What were you doing? Where were you when you heard? How did you find out? What impact did it have on your life? What impact has it had on your life since then? How did you start? How did you move forward? That's it from us. Go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back